Alright, gamers. No long intros, no advertisements. I'm Shield Maiden. Let's get into it. I asked for PvP advice, and boy, I got it. As you can tell, there isn't any one way to play better or guarantee a trip to the lighthouse. There are a ton of things that Guardians can do to improve their gameplay, though. The tricky part is bringing all the pieces of the puzzle together to hopefully secure the win. First up, volume. I only saw one person bring it up, but as someone who needs every advantage I can get, I thought it was a really great point. Turning up your volume so you can hear opponents jumping, going invisible, running, or even hearing the sniper shots zoom by your head can help give you the extra information you may need to win the round. Confidence. This is a tricky one. Confidence takes a long time to build up, especially since the meta in a game like Destiny is always changing. It seems as soon as I feel good with one weapon type, the meta shifts, thus rendering me completely useless. I think playing with confidence is simply being able to make a decision, commit to it, and then reviewing the outcome. More often than not, you'll start to see the shift in your decision-making process. Over time, you'll make more good decisions than bad. Hang in there, you got this. Lean into the meta. There are obviously going to be weapons that are overall very hard to counter and reigning supreme in PvP activities. My Matador 64 is a great shotgun, but I'm going to lose to a conditional finality every single time. Your opponents are doing what it takes to win, so you should too. Know what the meta is, find a weapon or two within the meta that you like using, and lean into using it like your in-game life depends on it. Because it does. Play with what works for you. So you don't like or vibe with any of the absolute meta weapons, no biggie. Even just using what you are the best with is still really helpful to your team. For example, being able to throw on a long-range weapon on a big map is a huge plus, even if it's not Cloud Strike, Wish Ender, or Dead Man's Tale. Using weapons you aren't comfortable with will only be more of a hindrance to you and your team. Have a plan. This advice is simple, but it's really, really important to have a plan. Trial shows you what the other team is using. This is the perfect time to plan how aggressive you're going to be, what routes you're going to take, and who, if anyone, is going to flank, etc. It really does help to know where your teammates are going to be, who is using long range versus short range weapons, who's better at being aggressive, and so much more. The best part about having a plan is that you can always change it as well. Play your tempo until the engagement calls for otherwise. As a relatively solo player, I tend to play more reserved. Playing my tempo means I'm going to sit in hand cannon range and team shot. However, if we get a pick or the engagement changes, essentially, I will push to collapse on an opponent's res or back up and disengage entirely in hopes of securing a teammate's revive. Basically, play how you are comfortable until other elements take precedence. Map awareness. Map awareness is huge for any PvP game mode. Going into private games to test ranges, identify lanes, and overall become more familiar with a map is the biggest thing you can do to increase your awareness and game sense. This will also help you read your radar better. You'll know the spots that people like to use heat rises in, where the spots are that people are likely going to crouch or be invisible, or where the natural flow of the map leads to common engagement areas. Knowing a map really well helps you know what to expect and where to expect it. Control the space. Controlling the space is absolutely crucial, especially in a game mode like Dominion. Being able to block off a hallway with a dusk field, hold an opponent's res with a barricade, or even pop a bubble or well on the flag can absolutely make or break the round. Positioning. I could probably do a whole video on just positioning because it really depends on what is going on in the engagement. For Dominion trials, you really want to position yourself to obtain the objective. As Myron said, the team with the control of the zone wins 90% of the time. If your team downs an opponent, it's important to reposition so that the enemy team cannot revive their teammate. If your teammate gets downed, it's also just as important to reposition to possibly get the revive, or to simply live. Positioning is crucial to be aware of. While team shots are preferred, playing so close together may pose a potential problem when facing a Cloud Strike or becoming suppressed by a grenade. Positioning is everything, and can only be learned by practicing and enhanced by map awareness, reading the radar, and communicating with your team. Target priority. Target priority is something that is ever changing. could change from round to round or game to game. Sometimes you'll match people that you recognize as being good at PvP. Focusing them and taking them down early could prove a great tactic for getting a leg up in the round. Another point of target priority is spotting the flank, calling it out, and double teaming them. This will immediately put you in a 3v2, giving your team the advantage. Radar, radar, radar. It is there in the top left corner for free. Learning to use it effectively is crucial for anyone in a PvP game mode. It tells you where enemies are, how close they are, if they are below or above you, or even if they're using heat rises. It also tells you if someone is crouching by blinking. The radar is highly useful and seemingly underused. Cover and angles. Shadow Destiny has already covered this pretty heavily in his video about the 40-60 rule. Basically, you want 40% of your screen to be taken up by cover, and 60% should be the space adjacent to the cover. Long story short, use cover. When you're reloading, when you're low health, when you're reading radar, use cover. Shooting by cover is super advantageous because if you get hit, you can start to regenerate your health and use the cover to not get hit again. Being in the open just means you're that much easier to hit. Team shots. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter who gets the kill. Team shooting is the key to winning any PvP game, because you can bet the enemy team is trying to do the same thing. You can use that to your advantage by having someone run Cloud Strike, or just communicate which target to hit and primary the ever-loving out of them. This sounds really vague and not helpful, but it is the most simple, easy to follow piece of advice. Play your life. If your health is low, disengage and get to cover. If you're flanking, disengage if you have a duo collapsing on you. Play your life simply means do what you have to do to stay alive. You're really no help to your teammates as a ghost, other than some slight comms. So staying alive and being able to contribute to the team shooting or ground control is vital. Communication is huge. Telling your teammates what you're using, where you're at, where the enemy team is, and what they're doing. I mean, half the battle is having the information, so the more info you have, the better. Even if you aren't alive, you can still spectate and give your teammates callouts as to the whereabouts of the other team. Improvise, adapt, overcome. But seriously, adapting to your opponents can really make or break the game. If you have on a pulse rifle and a hand cannon, and your enemy has a hand cannon and shotgun, there's a 90% chance they're winning any close range encounter, especially if they get within shotgun range. Make sure you're comfortable with a few different types of long and short range weapons to adapt to your opponents and defend yourself. Make your shots count and use your super. While team shotting seems to be the #1 piece of advice, the shots don't actually do anything unless you hit them. A big piece of this is having great map awareness and knowing where enemies' heads will usually be. Also, please don't take your supers to orbit. They are there for you to use to gain advantage, to win a round, or win the game. Dominion runs rampant with zone capping supers, so it's important to know what will break them. For instance, I like to use Thunder Crash for bubbles and wells. As the tweet said, don't try to be a hero. Especially solo queuing, it can be hard to communicate exactly what you're trying to do. Flanking by yourself and then possibly dying puts your teammates in a rough position to try and win the round. It gives the enemy such an advantage that it's really hard to come back from. Don't give up. Just because you're down 3-0 does not mean the game is over. Don't quit the match, don't jump over the edge of the map, and don't throw the game. Giving up doesn't help you improve, and it certainly doesn't make you feel any better. Sometimes it takes a few rounds to get into a rhythm, and that's okay. There is a saying, there's always someone worse than you, and there's always someone better than you. I don't know who said it, or if I just made it up, but it's true. There will be games where no matter what you do, they're simply better at aiming, reading your movements, and getting the kills. It is okay. Dying in-game and losing is going to happen. The most important thing you can do here is accept it, not let it deter you from playing, and doing your best. Watch your gameplay back. Watching your gameplay back is something even athletes do to be able to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. It's quite easy to identify mistakes, see what the better decision would have been, and see things that you missed when you aren't in the heat of the moment. You don't have to do this all the time, but if you really want to improve, this is definitely something worth doing. There was actually quite a lot of advice that I received on the tweet that I posted regarding getting better or doing better in trials. The link to the tweet is going to be in the description if you want to see every single reply that was written to the tweet. I also just want to give a huge thank you and a huge shout out to all of the people that replied and were very eloquent and concise, gave great advice, really just want people to do better. It was a really good feeling seeing over 200 replies and only a handful were people being silly. I definitely learned a lot from this experience and will be taking all of this into PvP with me, and hopefully I'll get better. If you liked the video, please comment, like, subscribe, and check out the socials. Bye!